If you're like me, you might have scrap bits of yarn pretty much everywhere you look. You hold on to them because you know that they can be turned into something good, but you just don't have enough for a full project. So that's why I've created my yarn scrap series. This is another video in that series. I'll link the whole playlist below if you have a ton of yarn scraps like me and you want a bunch of fun, quick, super portable, really easy projects that you can crochet and use up some of your yarn scraps. This playlist and this video I think are going to be perfect. Just 6 yards is all you need to crochet a little star like this in about 10 to 15 minutes. This one is worked up in a worsted weight yarn, which is what I recommend in the pattern, but I thought we could experiment a little bit today and try to come up with some more interesting stars by using more interesting yarn. You know, I think, just so you can see what I'm doing, at least for the first time, let's go with the maker yarn, because I think, well, I know that the stitch definition in this yarn is incredible, and I know this one will be easy for you to see. So this yarn is a bulky weight yarn, which is bigger than what the pattern, you know, is written for. However, it's kind of on the thinner side for a bulky weight yarn. I'm tempted to just use the same size crochet hook. The pattern recommends that we start with 4 chains and then we'll join with the slip stitch to the first chain to form a ring. Now when you do it this way, you do have a little bit of a hole in the center, and that's maybe personal preference. If you don't like the circle in the middle, I would say use the magic ring, but if you like that or you don't mind that it's there, you could do 3 chains for a smaller hole, or 4 chains I know will work just fine. It's really interesting how it comes together. So for now we need to make this pentagon shape, and as you can see we're working with 5 groups of 3 double crochets to make that shape. So in order to start out, you'll make 3 chains and then make 2 double crochets in the center of the ring. And these 3 stitches together make up one of the 5 sides. So then we'll chain 2 for one of the little corner spaces there. And then 3 double crochets in the center again. And that's basically the repeat. Three double crochets, chain 2, and then you'll have to scrunch everything over as you know, progress through the round. That way everything will fit in the center. And then to keep everything consistent, we need 2 more chains, so we have another like point or corner. So we'll chain 2 and join with the slip stitch to that 3rd chain, which is technically our first double crochet of the round, and then we have our little pentagon shape. Super easy, right? So there's actually only 2 rounds to this entire star. That was obviously the first one, but the last round creates all of the points, and it does so in a really interesting way. So to start that out, we'll make 6 chains, and then a combination of stitches that slowly graduate to a thicker part, if you will. We have a single crochet in the 2nd chain from the hook, which I'm using the back bumps of the chain. I think it looks a little neater that way. And then half double crochet in the next chain, double crochet in the 3rd, and then treble crochet in the last 2. Now don't worry, this will want to curl up quite a bit on you, but we can fix that pretty easily. Then just slip stitch in the next chain 2 space. And that's how we create all of the points, actually. So we'll just go right into the next one. We have 6 chains. And remember our combo: single, half double, double, 2 trebles, and slip stitch. So that's why this isn't a really easy pattern to alter the size, because you're not, I mean, you are crocheting in rounds, but because you're not crocheting along the round, if that makes any sense at all, it's not like you can add a round to it to make it bigger or subtract a round to make it smaller. You really only have the choice of changing the gauge to make it bigger or smaller. And that's just this star in particular. There are other ways to crochet stars, and maybe we can explore some of those later on if you're interested in that. But yeah, there are other stars where you can change the size. This one is just, you know, it's really fun because it's a very pointy star and it's very different. It's not something that you see very often. There we go. So when we get the last point done, join with the slip stitch to the first chain 2 space, and see how curly and funky it looks? No worries, we'll fix it. So trim the yarn. I like to use that invisible seam for this one as well, because see, look, when you normally would just pull through, see how that gives you like a folded loop bump thing? There's a better way. Not that that's wrong or anything, but if you were to just pull straight up, pull that all the way through, we'll thread this, and then find your next stitch over, run it all the way through, and then this is the stitch that we pulled through. Go in through both loops there. And then that creates kind of a faux chain. Makes it look a little bit neater. I don't know, it's one of those tricks that when I learned it, it's my go-to now for pretty much any type of round. Depending on what you're going to do with this star, you can be a little bit more diligent with weaving in your ends. I'm kind of cheating and taking the short route. So if it looks like this right off of the hook, you're perfectly fine. It's kind of going to do that because of the way that it's crocheted. But it blocks really well, even just finger blocking, right? So I'm just kind of flipping it in the opposite direction that it wants to go, and it's totally straightening out. Yeah, I think that looks really good with this yarn. I'm really undecided on whether I like using a slightly smaller hook. This one obviously was the slightly smaller hook route for this yarn choice, and you know, I don't know if it looks any different than this one, which was kind of a bigger yarn choice or hook choice for the yarn. So depending on what you're going to do with these stars, that'll dictate how much you need to, you know, correct the curling that we have going on. These are really cute to just sew onto other projects. I've actually made some of these and sewn them directly to a baby blanket, and that was really, really cute. But some other interesting and different ways you can use it in a shadow box, I think that could be really cool. And in those cases, you would just, you know, maybe glue it to a background and put them in the box. I would say in most other applications, you're going to sew it to something so you don't have to worry about the curl so much. But if you're not going to directly sew them to something, you can correct a lot of this with wet blocking. So you would just, you know, saturate the whole thing in water and pin it out to a blocking board. Maybe we can do that on one of them later and just let it dry overnight, and it just makes a world of difference. So yeah, bulky weight yarn with really good stitch definition. Very good choice for this star. I'm really curious about homespun, because this yarn is just, it's very interesting, right? It's not a smooth yarn, so I think that will just be really different and interesting with this star. I don't have the label anymore to go off of that, but my intuition says that a 5 is probably the way to go. We'll see. I do want to experiment with the magic ring on one, but I don't know if this is the right yarn for experimenting with, because it's just a little lofty, you know. It's just the nature of it. Do we really have to weave in the ends? We have so many stars to make. Let's just weave in the ends later. totally works. And it actually looks pretty cool. And look at that, it's far less curly. We used the same hook size for both of these. It's interesting, right? It doesn't look like this would be that much bigger because it's not that much thicker than this one. But you know, same hook size, different yarns, completely different outcome. We have some Woolies Thick and Quick. We can go with an 8, which I think still might be, yeah, that's gonna be too small. Let's start with a 9 and see what that looks like. You know, this one turned out more interesting than I thought it would. I really wasn't sure how this pattern would look with a yarn that transitions from one color to the next. I would say if you're going with a super bulky yarn, at least start with the 9mm and see how that looks. I don't know, that one turned out pretty fun. I actually kind of like it. Now, we have to try this yarn. I don't know why I would want a fuzzy star, but I don't know, it could be really cute. It might be really great for the project that you have in mind. So we'll see if this one works. I actually don't have the yarn label for this one anymore, but I think sticking with the 9mm is probably the right choice. I don't know, I guess the benefit to crocheting with super low definition yarns is, yeah, you're probably going to make a mistake because you can't see what you're stitching, but because you can't see what you're stitching, you can't really see the mistakes. This might be one of those instances where I'm eating my words because this might actually turn out really darn cute. There's a definite chance that I missed some stitches on these two little spikes. But you know, I looked up the hook size that's recommended for this yarn. A 9mm is, like, you know, the starting point or the recommendation on the yarn label. So that kind of gets rid of my theory. I was thinking if they required a smaller hook, that using one that was even bigger helped with the curl. I don't know why it isn't curling like all of the other stars have, but turned out a lot cuter than what I thought. You know, there's one thing I usually like to do whenever I work a project with this yarn. Sometimes you can see, you know, the backing area, and so I like to take a yarn needle and just kind of fluff the fur back out. Kind of just pulls it out of the stitches, you know. So as I'm working the magic ring with all of these stitches in there, I really do have to keep it on my fingers, and that's helping. 2, 3, so we have 4 groups of the 5 that we need. Okay, we'll get those last 2 chains here at the end. But, you know, this might be a better option. I really like the way it looks without that hole in the center. You know, the other thing I wanted to try is with the join here. We've been doing 2 chains and then joining at the end because the 2 chains match the other points in our little pentagon here. But see how this one looks a little bit bigger? That's where we chain 2 and join. And I think it's looking bigger because of the join. So let's try 1 chain and then join and see if that matches a little bit better. Just for comparison, this is also a 100% acrylic yarn. I'm pretty sure this is the label for the one that I'm using now. Yeah, this is 100% acrylic yarn as well, using the same exact hook size. And just, I mean, and I have flattened this out quite a bit and it still wants to curl just a teeny bit. This one really is not curling much at all. Look how funny that is. So the first 2 really didn't want to curl at all. And these ones are wanting to curl a little bit. You know, I bet what is making the difference is how tight I'm making the chains. So that's something we can play with as well. But that's really cute. I like how this is, it reminds me of like denim, like a, I don't know, like a washed denim kind of color. I think it's really cute for the star. Definitely do like the fact that This is smaller, it matches better, so yeah, I think that modification will be happening to the pattern. So we have 6 different yarns and 6 completely different results. I think this was a really fun experiment. There are a few takeaways, I would say. One, erring on the side of a bigger hook than what you think you need is probably the better option because it seems to have less curl when you do it that way. The other thing has to do with the chains that you're making in your second round. So if you look on this one, I feel like you can see it really well. Let's get the gray color here. This is the top of my stitches and this is the bottom chain. And you can see there's a pretty noticeable difference in the size. These are just a little bit tighter and a little bit looser, and I think the tightness from the chains is what's causing that to want to curl a little bit. So I think if you overemphasize how loose you're making those chains, I think it'll go a long way. But I think out of all of this, the most interesting thing to me is how you can take the same pattern, the same person, the same hook size, and come up with a completely different result. And that's why I love a project that's small like this, because you can quickly and easily crochet up a few of these, and you can learn a lot about that yarn, how it's going to behave in your project, how it's going to behave with the hook that you want to use with it. Yeah, I think that is probably the most valuable lesson out of all of this. So this pattern is available completely free on my website. I will have it linked in the description below. If you want to support the channel or you like the convenience of having your patterns printed or saved to your phone or your tablet as you're working, I have that option for you in my shop. B.Hooked.com is our shop for all of our PDF patterns. We've got some PDF pattern bundles, and we have some t-shirts if you like that sort of thing. If you really like scrap projects, I have an entire playlist dedicated to help you use up your yarn scraps and turn them into something cute in a really quick and easy way like this. I'll have that linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one.